According to psychologist Tom Stafford, having an awareness of this effect can assist you in avoiding being duped by propaganda. One of the laws of propaganda states that if a lie is said often enough, people will start to believe it. This kind of propaganda has become widespread in political Western society. It would appear that political leaders in the West do not want to see an independent Africa, since this would bring about their utter devastation. As a result of this, whenever Africans begin to resurge and demand their rights to be freed from Western influence, particularly American intervention, Westerners fabricate a story that is not true, and under the guise of acting to stabilize the countries on the justification that human rights were violated and massacres occurred, they actually act to destroy and cripple the nations. This is done under the pretense that they are acting to stabilize the countries. Therefore, in this video, we will explain how WSTER and propaganda destroyed Libya. Therefore, make sure to watch the whole thing until the very end. However, before we get started, make sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so. And with that, let's get started. The story of Muammar Gaddafi, former leader of Libya, serves as an instance of this point. During the Al-Fayda revolution in 1669, Gaddafi was able to seize power from a corrupt king. After that, he nationalized the oil corporations and spent a significant portion of the profits from the oil industry on a project to increase the supply of fresh water. It was Muammar Gaddafi's hope that one day all Libyans would have access to clean water and that the country would be able to produce all of its own food. Because Gaddafi's Libya considered access to water to be a fundamental human right, the country's citizens have not been required to pay for it, and the country has not needed to take out any loans from other countries to cover the over $30 billion cost of the project. Gaddafi's scheme, which received complete funding from the government, resulted in a doubling of American threats against Libya. The reason for this was obvious. The Americans wanted to prevent Gaddafi from achieving his goals and maintain the oppression of the Libyan people. However, Gaddafi was aware of Western aspirations to conquer Africa. The man continued to battle to awaken both his own nation and the rest of Africa. And ultimately, under Gaddafi's leadership, Libya had gone from being one of the continent's poorest nations to becoming its richest nation. In Libya, healthcare and education were supplied free of charge, there were no bills for water service, the ownership of property was regarded as an essential component of human rights, and local democracy was practiced. Gaddafi advocated for further integration at the Third African Union Summit, which was held in Tripoli, Libya, in July 2005. He also advocated for a single African Union passport, a shared defense system, and a single currency, all while using the slogan, "The United States of Africa is the hope." In 2023, we will commemorate the passage of 12 years since the violent intervention of NATO in Libya and the subsequent killing of Muammar Gaddafi. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, took action to prevent Muammar Gaddafi from creating a central bank in Africa that would issue a currency backed by gold. Ellen Brown asserts that the institution would have posed a threat to the dominance of the dollar and, in the long run, would have liberated Africa from the shackles of colonial rule. To free Africa from the economic shackles of being under the control of the dollar, the IMF, and the French African franc, the death of Gaddafi was intended to hinder the formation of an independent hard currency in the continent. This was done in order to free Africa from the shackles of being under the authority of these three entities. It is possible that Africa could have been liberated from the remaining chains of colonial exploitation and oppression with the assistance of that cold hard cash. However, political leaders in the West did not relax because they were worried about the situation in Libya and the challenge of waking up Africa. In July 2011, NATO not only bombed the great man-made river water supply pipeline near Brega, but they also destroyed the factory that creates the pipes to repair it. As justification for their actions, NATO claimed that the factory was utilized as a military storage facility and that rockets were launched from there. The Western world initially began its assault on Libya and its leader by making up claims about violations of human rights. One of the fabrications that the West has developed is the belief that Gaddafi gives his troops Viagra so that they can rape women. The West is responsible for creating this myth. Susan Rice, the envoy of the United States to the United Nations, briefed the Security Council that Gaddafi supporters in Libya were becoming more sexually violent and that some of them had been given Viagra, a drug for impotence. She also mentioned that some of the Gaddafi loyalists had been given the medication. Libya is still in ruins even after being humiliated by the intervention of Western nations. According to Linda Hausman, PhD, a democratic and democracy-bringing regime that came to power by the hurting and killing of thousands of Libyans by humanitarian bombs, and that overthrew the dictator whose ambition it was to give pure water for all Libyans for free. The opposite of slavery is freedom, and the opposite of war is peace. Despite this, Western nations have not stopped inventing elaborate lies about the war that is currently unfolding in Ukraine and Russia. Officials from the United States have just disclosed that Russian soldiers are being given Viagra before raping and sexually assaulting Ukrainian women. It is important to keep in mind that they are employing the very same strategies against Russia as they did against Libya. The likelihood that a claim is true increases each time it is repeated. To put it another way, the more frequently you are exposed to a certain assertion, the greater the likelihood that you will regard that assertion as being true. This method is recognized as truth by repetition, or TBR for short, in the body of scholarly work that pertains to science. After everything that has transpired during the latter part of this year, the Western law of propaganda returns. To this day, Western leaves no stone unturned in its quest to preserve its authority and further its own interests. Even making up scenarios like getting blood out of a stone isn't enough to stop it. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you in the next one.